The evening sunlight filtered softly through the living room curtains as I placed a bouquet of fresh lilies on the table. I had left work early that day, excited to surprise my husband with his favorite dinner. The house felt strangely quiet, no television, no music, just the faint hum of the air conditioner. Then, from upstairs, came a sound. A laugh. Light, familiar, but wrong. My chest tightened. At first, I tried to ignore it, convincing myself I was imagining things. But then came the whisper, my husband's voice, followed by a giggle that froze me where I stood. My sister's voice. I clutched the railing, my hands trembling as I began to climb the stairs. Each step echoed like thunder in my ears. The door to our bedroom was slightly open. I pushed it slowly, praying that I was wrong, that my mind was playing cruel tricks. But when the door swung wide, the truth hit me like a storm. There they were, tangled together, startled faces turning toward me as if I had no right to be there. My sister gasped, clutching the sheet. My husband's face went pale. My heart felt like it stopped beating. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, my breath caught in my throat, watching everything I had built fall apart in front of me. The man I trusted, the sister I loved, both looking back at me with the guilt of thieves caught in the act. And in that silence, something inside me broke, not loudly, but quietly, completely. For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound in the room was the frantic beating of my heart. My husband tried to speak first, stuttering words that dissolved before they reached me. It's not what you think, he said, voice trembling, eyes darting to the floor, but I could see the truth written all over his face. My sister wrapped the blanket tighter around herself, tears welling in her eyes, but I couldn't even look at her. Every part of me was shaking, my hands, my lips, even my knees that barely held me up. Then, behind me, I heard a small gasp. I turned and saw her, my daughter, standing in the doorway. I hadn't even realized she'd followed me upstairs. Her eyes were wide, confused at first, then full of hurt as she looked past me to her father and her aunt. The air in the room thickened, no one dared to breathe. My husband reached out, whispering her name, but she stepped back as if his touch would burn her. Her tears came fast, hot and silent. How could you? She whispered, voice breaking. There was no anger in her tone, only disbelief, the kind that comes when a child's world suddenly collapses. My sister tried to cover her face, but it was too late. The image was burned into my daughter's memory forever. I tried to reach for her, but she pulled away and ran, down the hallway, down the stairs, out the front door, the sound of her footsteps echoing through the house like an accusation. I stood frozen at the doorway, unable to follow, unable to breathe. My husband sank to the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands, but I couldn't look at him. The house that once held laughter now felt poisoned, heavy with shame, betrayal, and a silence that would never be innocent again. The days that followed felt like walking through the ruins of a life I once knew. The walls of our home seemed to echo with memories that no longer belonged to us, laughter, shared dinners, quiet talks before bed. My husband tried to apologize every morning, his voice hoarse from endless pleas, but his words only made the air heavier. I didn't shout or cry anymore, I simply stopped feeling. My sister was gone, her number disconnected, her things taken from the guest room in the middle of the night. But it was my daughter's silence that frightened me most. She no longer came downstairs for breakfast. She no longer looked at me with the same warmth. Her eyes were distant, not empty, but sharp, calculating, as if something inside her was hardening. When her father tried to approach her, she would walk past him like he didn't exist. She didn't yell, didn't curse him. She just withdrew, turning her pain into something cold and controlled. One night, I found her sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the dark. I sat beside her, the night air cold between us. For a long while, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said quietly, without looking at me, "You know what hurts the most? It's not that he cheated on you. It's that he made us feel stupid for trusting him." Her voice didn't tremble, it was steady, almost frightening in its calm. I wanted to tell her to let it go, to not carry the burden of his sins, but before I could speak, she added, "He doesn't deserve peace, Mom. People like him only learn when they lose what they love." Her words hung in the air, soft but heavy, like the calm before a storm. That night, as I watched her go back inside, I realized something had changed in her, not just anger, but resolve. She wasn't the same girl anymore. She was planning something. And deep down, I knew, she wouldn't rest until he felt the same pain he had given us. It started quietly, almost invisibly, the way storms sometimes begin with a whisper instead of thunder. My daughter spent more time on her laptop, always calm, always polite, speaking to me just enough to keep my worry at bay. My husband, desperate to rebuild the family, tried to act as though things were normal, cooking breakfast, leaving notes on the fridge, pretending not to notice how we both ignored him. But the truth was, she was already several steps ahead of him. One morning, I noticed her at the dining table, scrolling through photos, old family pictures, screenshots, messages. Her face was expressionless, but her eyes were focused, determined. "What are you doing?" I asked softly. She looked up at me, smiled faintly, and said, "Fixing a lie." That was all. I didn't ask again. Something in her tone told me not to. Within a week, whispers began to spread. It started at his workplace. Someone had leaked screenshots, messages between him and my sister, photos he thought were private. Then it spread to his friends, his colleagues, even the community group he helped run. The man who once lectured others about integrity was suddenly the subject of every cruel laugh, every whispered conversation. When he came home that evening, his face was pale, his eyes hollow. "Someone's trying to destroy me," he said, his voice shaking. My daughter didn't look up from her book. "No," she said quietly. "You already did that yourself." He tried to shout, tried to defend himself, but the more he spoke, the more his voice cracked under the weight of truth. Calls from friends stopped. His boss suspended him. Even neighbors avoided him when he stepped outside. The shame grew like wildfire, consuming his pride, his confidence, his reputation, everything he valued more than us. And through it all, my daughter never raised her voice. She didn't scream or argue. She simply watched him unravel, calm and composed, as if witnessing a lesson being taught. When he finally broke down, sobbing in the living room, she walked past him slowly, her face unreadable. For the first time since that terrible day, I realized, she wasn't just punishing him out of anger. She wanted him to understand the depth of the pain he caused. Every tear he shed was a mirror of ours, reflected back until there was nothing left of the man he used to be. When everything was finally out in the open, the house fell silent again, but it was a different kind of silence. Not the heavy one that follows betrayal, but the stillness that comes after a storm has passed. My husband sat in the living room, a broken figure surrounded by the wreckage of his own choices. His phone, once buzzing nonstop, now lay untouched. No one called. No one came. Even his closest friends had turned their backs. I found my daughter standing near the window, sunlight tracing the side of her face. She looked older somehow, not in years but in spirit. The girl who once needed her father's approval had become someone unshakable, strong, calm, and painfully wise. She turned toward him slowly, her expression neither cruel nor kind, just steady. He tried to speak, to apologize again, to explain what couldn't be explained, but his voice broke halfway through. She didn't interrupt him, didn't raise her voice. When he finally fell silent, she said softly, "You taught me something important, Dad. That love without respect means nothing. You broke Mom's heart, and mine too. But now you know what it feels like when someone destroys your trust." Her words didn't carry anger, they carried truth. The kind that leaves no room for defense. He lowered his head, shoulders shaking, as tears streamed down his face. For a long moment, she just watched him, not with hatred, but with the quiet understanding of someone who has already let go. Then she turned to me, her eyes calm, and whispered, "We can move on now." She walked toward the door, pausing only once to look back. "He's already punished himself more than we ever could," she said. And she was right. When the door closed behind her, the house felt lighter. Not healed, not yet, but free. I sat beside my husband, not out of love, but out of pity for the man who had lost everything he once had. My daughter's justice hadn't come from vengeance, it had come from strength, the kind that refuses to be broken, even by betrayal. And as I watched her disappear down the street, head held high, I realized she hadn't just punished him, she had saved us both.